My name's Pellett. I am author of Cracking the Code to a Successful Interview, and also have recorded many CD series and other online clip series through Audible that will help you make a difference for yourself in getting the job. And my book is also in an audio format for you if you want to take time to listen to it through Blackstone. There's copies on Amazon and everywhere that you could need to find them, you can get to it. And in this day and age, with all the struggle we're having with this awful COVID and the coronavirus, being able to get to the front of the line at $10 or less to really get yourself something that could help you get a huge raise in the level of the job that you have, or secure a job at difficult times, is absolutely key. Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here with you tonight about my book and spend some time in this challenging time. And I know many of you want to become entrepreneurs and are super excited about it. I want to take a moment to invite in and introduce my dear friend and close business partner, Richard Hunnewell. At this time with COVID and coronavirus and so many things are happening, some folks have had trouble with employment. And I will say some folks very inventively have gone out and used this time to pursue a dream and start a business that might help other people create their dreams. And I wanted to ask Richard, and really appreciate him taking some special time with us here this evening, is perhaps, Richard, tell me a little bit about, if you would, some of the principles I know you'll be sharing about in our future classes on Leader How, about being the best entrepreneur and remaining a happy person. What are some of the things that folks need to incorporate and pursue to both be successful on starting their business, but also remaining content and fulfilled and joyful, especially during this difficult time? And Richard's tips will give you an edge in a way that so many others won't be able to give you.
Well, I think there's no substitute for hard work in achieving success in any vocation in life. The mistake that I made, however, as a young man who was very ambitious and who worked very hard, is that I operated under this myth that if I made a lot of money, that would make me happy. And to a certain extent, that was beneficial to me, that attitude, because it drove me to work very hard. But it was a mistaken motivation, because I soon discovered as I began to make money, it didn't make me happy. It's like people who get divorced and they come out of that divorce very hurt, and they decide that they have to change their environment in order to get on with their lives and be happier. And so they'll pack up and move or change a career. But the interesting thing is, one's baggage always comes with one.
Yes.
And they discover that moving to a new location or getting a new career just makes them happier. And I learned that the hard way. So what I now teach to younger people in my mentor is that it's far more important to win the inner game first. Happiness comes from within. And a lot of us will say that, but we don't believe it. We are so conditioned by media and advertising to believe that if we change our circumstances on the outside, that will make us happier. And it's really not true. And I learned this the hard way. I had to work on myself inside in terms of my mental mindset. And happiness is attainable inside, irrespective of circumstances. Everything I had been indoctrinated with from outside voice was that you need to do this to be happy. You need to have a lot of money to be happy.
Whether you're an entrepreneur, someone chasing a career, a not-for-profit focus as a career, or otherwise, that you can have won this inner game and then go out and make a difference. And I also want to add, if I may, that Richard has had the success to hang with some of the most influential and successful people in Palm Beach, and has a beautiful location there. But I believe what attracts them to him, and also in the folks that he mentors, is that he spent all this time cultivating his inner self and achieving happiness, so he could bring all those qualities to his relationships and exude happiness. And I think that's why it's such a wonderful following of friends, because I know Richard works hard, but he had the choice to retire at a very young age because he worked for it and he earned it. I was going to ask Richard, if you had to say 3 things and sum them up as well, that are practices that people can apply that are absolutely important in both winning the inner game towards happiness, just to give people a little peek of insight into the path before they get it in your full interview and in your classes on Leader How. Tell me just maybe 3 things that are really concrete, sort of a laser version of things they have to do.
I think number one needs to take 100%, absolutely 100% responsibility for everything in one's life. Now, I say that to people, and immediately the response is, well, wait a minute, sometimes tragedies happen that I'm not responsible for. Why should I take responsibility because my child got sick or my parent died prematurely?
Yes.
And certainly those things are it's very hard to take responsibility for that. But I think that if one does take responsibility for that, if one can expand one's awareness so large that one realizes that we create our reality ourselves in our heads.
So how they react to those events is really key. So if they've had an awful event.
So I think if one can be very Machiavellian about this, in that the ends justify the means. So if I operate from the posture and the attitude that I am responsible for everything that happens in my life, for my wife leaving me, or the disease that I have, if one takes that responsibility, then one has control over one's reality. And the power of the mind is so intense that who knows, maybe we do have the power to do those things. So my question is, my answer is, in a pragmatic sense, if I believe that I'm responsible for everything in my life, versus I believe that circumstances are responsible for my life, which of those 2 mindsets do you believe will lead to a better life?
Yes.
And I'm all about results. I'm all about results, permanent and lasting results. And I found that when I lived my life being cynical and feeling that circumstances were controlling me, and as a result becoming a victim, that life did not operate at the peak level. Yes. Life became very good.
Tell us about discipline and what that means.
That's another area that I think speaks to answering your initial question, the 3 things that lead to success and happiness. I believe that discipline is actually the route to freedom. It's kind of counterintuitive because it's difficult to be disciplined. People say, it's hard for me to do this, and I don't want to do it. So how does that lead to freedom? Well, what it does is it puts control of our lives in our hands. And you would be surprised at how easy it is to be disciplined through practice, because we are creatures of habit. Everything that we do, we become habituated to. In fact, that's the reason the human species has proliferated all over the world. We live in the Arctic where it's minus 50 degrees, and we live at the equator where it's 110 degrees. No other species on the planet is as adaptable as we are. And it's because we are creatures of habit. We can get used to just about anything. So you'd be surprised how one can change their relationship with discipline just by being disciplined. And I have found for myself personally that when I do that, and I do things that I don't necessarily want to do, but I have a habit formed within my nervous system to just do it anyway, that makes me feel completely free, because I'm choosing things to do of my own volition. I'm not doing them because the circumstances dictate, or that my feelings dictate whether or not I do it.
Okay, great. That's so important. So living out a commitment rather than feeling, but thus the outcome being inner freedom, happiness through the discipline.
The third component to what I believe leads to success and happiness is absolutely cultivating a sense of gratitude.
Yes,
yes. We And that speaks to whether or not one has a mindset of abundance versus a mindset of lack.
Yes,
right?
yes.
It's very easy, if one is not grateful for what they have, to feel that they're always lacking, and therefore they need more and more and more. And it's a perpetual rat race that is never fulfilled. But when I step back and I make a conscious effort each and every day to list what I'm grateful for and what I appreciate, all of a sudden I realize that I'm living in abundance. Just the virtue of the fact that I was born into Western civilization and I can put food in my belly every day, right? Gives me a sense that I have so much. And then you couple on top of that all the material blessings I have, the love that I have, the relationships that I have. The more I consciously think about appreciating what is in my life, the more my life feels so much richer, so much fuller, so much happier. And then lastly, let me just add that I always like to make the distinction between happiness and joy.
Yes.
Because it's impossible to be happy all the time. Happy has a temporal nature to it, right? I'm happy now, and I'm certainly not going to be happy later. So therefore, I pursue joy more than I pursue happiness, because joy has an endearing quality to it. And I believe that by cultivating this attitude of gratitude and by appreciating just being alive,
yes,
the joy just naturally flows within me, and it isn't temporal the way happiness. It's always there.
Okay, great. And because number 3, it's interesting you mentioned that, gratitude and the gratitude mindset, as well as our mindset about accountability versus being a victim, how that changes things. But you've gone much deeper into not just studying 2 major sciences, but putting them into action, and that's created actual outcomes and change for you. And I know 2 of the biggest ones, which are favorites for you, neuroplasticity and epigenetics. Please tell us, because we want to learn how to change our mind, how to make our mind better, and how to make a mind that will absolutely bring us in the direction of actualizing the ability to change it and show it an outcome in our lives. Please tell us about those 2 things, but also your application and affirmation of those and how that has changed some outcomes for you.
Well, it used to be that the neuroscientists believed that our genetics determined not only who we were, but who we would become. And that it was written in the genes, and there was really nothing that we could do about it. So that if we had a particular skill, like the ability to do very close work, detailed work, or we were just naturally athletic, it was all written in the genes.
Yes.
And through the tremendous research that's gone on in recent years in neuroscience, they have discovered, much like the food pyramid in nutrition, that the truth is the exact opposite. Remember the food pyramid of the 70s? They told us that carbohydrates were very good for us and fat was very, very detrimental to us.
Yes.
They've actually flipped that on its the carbohydrates that are really bad for us, and the fats we actually need to survive. And so there's been a 180-degree change in nutrition. Well, the same thing in neuroscience. It's not necessarily the genes that determine who we are. It's the expression of those genes. And what determines the expression of those genes has more to do with the environment than it does with our inherent makeup.
Yes.
And these 2 sciences that have emerged from this just within the last 20 to 30 years are the science of epigenetics and neuroplasticity.
Okay.
Neuroplasticity teaches us that the brain, no matter what age, is malleable. We can learn new things at whatever age. And learning new things enables us to change, to create a better life. Now, I will agree that it is more difficult to change the older we get. It is very easy for an 11-year-old to change. They're very neuroplastic. But it is not true that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's just that it's more difficult.
Okay.
So neuroplasticity, the awareness that our brains can change, to me gives me great optimism that I can change my future, because I'm a great believer that in order for things to change, I must change. And I must change at the neurological level, the brain and the nervous system that controls everything.
Okay.
The other science is the science of epigenetics, which means literally epi, above, genetics, the genetics, above the genetics.
Wow.
Which means that the environment will determine whether or not those genes are expressed. Right? And what is probably the biggest environment that all of us are immersed in, that we don't even think about?
Yes.
It's our thoughts.
Yes.
Think about it. The average person has 30,000 thoughts every day.
Wow.
We're constantly thinking. And what we think actually has the power to control the expression of whether or not those genes are turned on or turned out. So that's why people who generally have a positive attitude,
Yes.
right, are much healthier.
Yes.
That's why the placebo effect works.
Yes.
You take a pill, you think it's a pill that's going to cure you. It's nothing but a sugar pill. And just because you believe through your thought process, you believe that it will heal you, it heals you.
Wow.
This is the power of the human mind. Doctors have known for years that the placebo effect works, but they never understood why. And it's due to epigenetics. So once I got exposed to epigenetics and to neuroplasticity, it's like a whole world of possibility opened up for me in terms of what I could create with my life. I realized, yeah, we all are the captains of our ship, and we all can, like our parents told us, we can pretty much be whatever we want to be, with certain physical limitations. I'm never going to be a pro football player, right, for example, but nevertheless, we have the power to influence reality and our destiny based on how we think. Let's do the science of epigenetics.
See, this is amazing, Richard. I'm so glad that you're sharing this, because knowing there's a science and then a way to apply it, it really, kind of summarizes how folks have overcome things or become things against all odds. I was watching something on football where a gentleman who was very, very short gentleman, and he was responsible for keeping people from running the football down for a touchdown in certain zones. And you never would have thought he would have made pro football, but he had such talent, and he would tackle everybody, and people didn't want to come to where he was because even the big people would get hit so hard. But that belief, almost too, we can become what we think about all day long. But in essence, what you're saying is we can influence genes, but do you also believe that in our inner miracle mindset that we can create miracles through what we visualize and through our thoughts, and start within here and then manifest almost anything?
Well, this brings in the whole realm of the spiritual. And this is an evolving area of interest for me. Many enlightened thinkers through the years have started out and used the art of thinking, positive thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, that whole positive thinking movement from the 50s and 60s. They altered their lives dramatically, but many of them, as they go on that journey, realize that beyond positive thinking and personal growth and development is the spiritual world.
Yes.
And what I find very interesting is, as I'm aging, I'm becoming more and more interested in the spiritual world and the magic that can be created by one's thought processes. And we live in a culture where the spiritual world is really, I don't think denigrated is too big a word. The scientific influences in society just look down their noses at spirituality. But here's the thing to consider. There's never been a society, the anthropologists will tell you this, there's never been a society nor a culture in human history where there hasn't been some transcendent belief or being that they worshipped.
Wow.
And they used to think years ago that perhaps there's something genetic that makes us predisposed to believe in a transcendent power, right? It's really ubiquitous. So there's something within us, and we live in the age of science, and science, does a real bad number on spirituality. But I'm finding as I'm evolving in my thinking over the years, and particularly as I'm getting older, that the spiritual world is, and I don't mean the religious world, I mean the spiritual world, the power of the spirit, that essence that is within us, that is missing. When I go to a funeral and I see a loved one who has died, and I look at the body, it occurs to me every time, that is not Uncle Leo. That is not Aunt Ella. It isn't. Without the spirit. And so, throughout all of scientific development, we've all known that they once believed the earth was flat. We've once believed some really crazy notions. So who's to say that we cannot create magic? I'm not saying we can, I'm not saying we can't. What I'm saying is I'm very, very open now to exploring the realm of the spirit and how that relates to my success in life. Success being defined as the realization of a worthy goal, a worthy ideal.
Wow.
Because to me, I have a very broad definition of success beyond just the financial success. It's success in relationship, it's success in health, it's a success in career, success in a sense of peace and well-being.
Yes.
These things are invaluable.
So much so, absolutely. Okay, thank you, Richard. And and I wanted to give you some exposure to what Richard is bringing to us. We're going to get amazing exposure to his expertise and influence around not just how he became successful financially as an entrepreneur, but how he became successful internally as a very happy, joyous person. And when we say joy, there's a real continuum in who he is and what he brings to everybody, as well as a fulfillment, because he did very well, and he discovered after doing so well that there was a whole nother level of fulfillment that he wanted to achieve within himself. And so there's going to be a lot of teachings about that in both his interview and the classes that we're doing in the upcoming year here. So stay tuned, and just an honor to get him here, and thank you for your time.
And if there's any one theme that I can leave with, that I know that we've put tremendous emphasis in developing our training courses to emphasize this as an overriding theme, is the absolute truth that the potential within everyone is far beyond what most people believe. We are capable of so much more. We are far more powerful than any of us realize. We need tools to get to that awareness, because it's all a function of how we choose to use this incredibly powerful machine, this biological machine on the top of our shoulders called the human brain. And when we can tap into that, we can tap into our power. And you and I have already, in both of our personal lives, demonstrated how much potential there is for every human being. I don't care how pessimistic one is about one's future. The future is friendly, and there's enormous possibilities available to everyone.
I love that. So well said and summarized. Thank you, Richard. And I want to say also is, for all of you that are out there that are listening, Leader How is something that Richard and I have put together, both as a very successful entrepreneur, as Richard has been, and then myself in the corporate world and recruiting and having a book and teaching people how to interview for their dream job and blow away the hiring manager. Richard has done a lot of mentorship for up-and-coming entrepreneurs and has very specific practices that has made them very successful. And these practices are about being successful as an entrepreneur, but also mainly focused as well on being able to have the energy and the happiness and the horsepower and the inner joy, we'll say, to actually allow the inner game to unfold and take place in their lives. And it's so miraculous to watch, but we want to bring you access. But let's say this, we want to bring you the visibility, the intimacy, which Richard and I both call into me see, of all the people whether in corporate America, they're the senior vice presidents, the CEOs, or the heads of not-for-profits, or even an individual contributor that has done amazingly well. And if you want to pursue that career, we want to show you from those people exactly what they thought, how they applied themselves, what they believed, what practices, what principles, even Richard, what struggles they went through in the process of getting there. And we're also going to share with you very closely about some of our struggles and roadblocks we hit and fell on our face in our lives and how we overcame them and went to the next step. But Richard also has a very sharp group of people that have achieved amazing success. And many times they're folks that, unless you live down in places like in Palm Beach and other spots, amongst them, you wouldn't get access to them. And many of them have so much wisdom and are wonderful people and are really dying to give back. And so in Leader How, they're going to show you their journey with Richard being able to ask and inquire with him about what are times you got up against things and struggled and failed, and what did you do out of that failure, but also give you a map from start to finish. So if you want to go on that journey, you don't have to spend 10 or 20 years trying to get a dinner with that person, hoping that they'll spend 5 hours with you to tell you all their secrets. Richard's going to bring access to those folks as well. So we are so happy. And I also want to say, Richard, if you had one message to give out to folks during COVID and the struggles that they're having with finding jobs or keeping their spirits up, what might you say to people to inspire them in the new year?
I would say tap into the power of belief. What we believe determines our destiny. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right.
Yes.
So be very careful what you choose to believe.
Thank you for the love and the beauty and the wisdom. I'm honored to be here with you once again, and we'll see you folks into the new year.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for having me.